welcome to another edition of the CWE webcast. We have a new guest, a soon-to-be drunk guest. Welcome to the program, Marius.
Oh, thank you for having me. You must be running pretty low on guests.
Well, we like to mix it up sometimes. Sometimes we've got legends like Lord Wolfstein.
Yes.
We've had other guys like Adam West from the radio station, and now we've got Marius.
There you go.
You know, we like to keep it going here, different variety. Also new to the program is Rob's haircuts.
Yep.
What made you decide to do it?
Just figured it was time.
Is this like that time of year right now? Garbage Steak had a haircut, Rob's had a haircut?
You had some good length going.
I did, yeah, and I made good use of it, donated it to the Cancer Society, so
Cool.
Just figured it was time, man. I found it annoying now. Like, you know, the novelty of having long hair is nice and fun.
You got to enjoy it while you have it, because eventually it starts to fall out.
Yeah.
It's not fun.
It just
You
becomes a hassle
wish you
to
could
fucking-
have that hair still.
That's true.
Kevin, you're back. It's been a couple weeks since you've been here. You've been some good guests. We had Marty Labassi on last week. He was a lot of fun. And most importantly, you missed Lord Wolfstein.
I
We
know.
just posted that today. And if you haven't watched it, please take the time to do it, because I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, it's
The
solid.
tour of his zombie apocalypse mobile was something I'll never
That's
get
awesome.
to.
That's straight out of his Resident Evil films or whatever. Yeah.
So it was quite special.
The man has a passion. I'll give him that.
Well, he's a 300-year-old warlock, as we found out on the program. So he's lived a lot. He's got a lot of life experience, a lot of wrestling experience.
He didn't like Garbage Snake too much, though. He was pretty,
Yeah.
pretty in his face almost, I would say there. You know, on the
Maybe warlocks kind of have a
more kind of
That's
straight
kind
and
of
narrow.
Very moral against drugs or something?
Usually snakes are using like their potions and spells
Yeah.
and whatnot, right? You know, snakes are like ingredients to them.
That's right.
Before we jump right into the program and talking everything going on in WB and the rest of the world of wrestling, first I got to ask you, where you been? You've been off the radar. You had your last match 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
You left the country for a little bit, and now you're kind of popping up again. We're seeing you around a little more often. Where you been?
Well, avoiding the wrestling business is where I've been, I guess.
So life's been good.
Life's been pretty good. No, I do miss the business sometimes. I don't know, I just like to come by once in a while. Kind of remind me of why I left. That's usually what I do.
I think you're in better shape now than when you were wrestling. What are you weighing in at now?
This is probably one of the lightest I've been. I'm down to like 167, 168.
Oh, wow.
Float around there.
So you and Travis are both the same weight right now.
Has Travis lost weight?
No, that's
it's just
Oh, alright then. Yeah, I actually lost 70 pounds overall in the last year.
70 pounds?
70 pounds, yeah.
Wow,
Peaked out at
congratulations.
240.
That's insane.
Yeah, 240, yeah. I was pretty fat.
What's been the secret to dropping all that weight?
You know, HIV, cocaine.
That's a deadly combination, but they do go hand in hand.
Yeah, they're really effective, though, so.
That would make sense. You just kind of vanished from the wrestling scene. You fled the country. It would make sense that you attracted HIV and decided to get out of the
Oh,
business.
yeah, Belize is full of HIV. It's really easy to come by. Wasn't a very big challenge, so.
So you opted not to stick around and give it to your fellow wrestlers. That would be a good rib.
Well, we still got time. We still got time.
Not everyone out. The show hasn't gone to production yet. Cat's not out of the bag yet.
You guys want to go to the washroom with me?
What was Sharon Eagle?
So Kevin, you mentioned before we went on air here in our our post-production program that CM Punk has finally been announced in a fight. It's gonna happen. You're our MMA analyst here. What's the scoop?
They basically gave him a new guy, right? They found this guy, they did this little kind of trip, they found this guy who was fighting in his MMA debut in some outside of UFC organization. He went over, so he's 1-0. So they brought him in for one, basically, fight against a jobber in the UFC. Mickey Gall's this guy's name. He went over again. It wasn't overly impressive, but he went over.
Do they have jobbers in the UFC?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah, they just, because they kind of do the wrestling gimmick, right? So say they're doing Milwaukee, they'll be like, oh, there's a couple local MMA guys that live in Milwaukee. More so when they expand into other countries, which they're really aggressive with now. So they do these fight cards in Brazil that are, you know, they'll be the main event guys. You're like, okay, yeah, I know them. And then the rest are these Brazilian J-Brons that they just dig up to, you know, because they're from that specific
Brazilian
city.
J-Brons.
Yeah, because they're from that specific city in Brazil. Or when they go to Japan, they dig up all these Japs with like 10 and 20 records.
Is that politically correct in 2016?
I think so, yeah. It's just Japanese.
I don't think anything is politically correct, so whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, we're old. I don't know any Japanese people. Yeah, so they do that, like, well, depending on where they are regionally. If they're just doing their home base with Vegas, then they just get, their regular mainstays kind of thing. But, like, even these Canadian cards, they just did one in Ottawa 2 weeks ago, and it was actually one of the most entertaining fights I've fucking seen in my life. They got this French dude who was a hockey enforcer named Steve Bossy in the Quebec leagues, and this guy had, like, he might have had some boxing training, and that was it, and he literally, like, stood toe-to-toe, and they're, like, 205ers at weigh-in, so they're probably 230 in the ring, big enough dudes, and they just fucking, like, slugged each other in the head back and forth for 3 rounds.
This was a UFC fight?
Yeah, like, last week in Ottawa. It was
wow.
Incredible. I put it on Paul Taylor's wall like 2-3 days ago, so you probably scrolled down.
Kind of a throwback to the old UFC.
Yeah, it was awesome, and like I was concussed watching it. but to go back to it, so this guy's gone over on 2 jobbers. So like, okay, this is a guy got a 2-0 record. One of those fights is technically under the UFC banner, so you've earned yourself a shot in the spotlight here, kid. Hop on board. You get to work CM Punk in his MMA debut, which I believe is at 170. It was rumored to be at 185 pounds, but he's cutting down. Yeah, he's welterweight.
So it's kind of like the wrestling model in the sense that we're gonna bring a couple headliners in, and then we're gonna keep the budget really low and fill up the card with guys who are gonna sell tickets.
Yes.
Okay.
And those guys don't command a high salary either.
No, they're probably doing it just to be on the show.
Yeah, I think they get $8 grand to show and $8 grand to win is usually the base pay in UFC.
Do you think Dana White makes them sell tickets? Like, you gotta sell 20 tickets or you don't get a fight on the show.
The gym, like, because those guys fight out of whatever gym, blah 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 blah. Like their camp probably has to guarantee sponsorship and this and that and the other. I think that's more to do with the camp than so much the individual fighter. But yeah, I bet you it does.
So this guy fighting CM Punk, he's a relative unknown, but
being
CM Punk's first opponent in UFC, he's going to be a name after this.
He will, and he's going to get a big payday from it because they don't disclose their pay-per-view bonuses, but basically the guys everybody on the main card gets extra money based on the buy rate of the pay-per-view, and that's a number that's not.
Which is going to be
ridiculous. For like 1 million buys?
About that, yeah. Like UFC 200 with the Brock Lesnar ones predicted to do about 2 million buys.
What's the record right now?
1.6. That was that was when Brock's rematch with Frank Mir at UFC 100.
What do they average per month?
Anywhere from 400 to 800,000.
Really?
Yeah.
So this is a big
event.
Shit
Shit ones do like 300-ish, but a decent one does 500-ish kind of thing,
That's a lot of buys.
That is a lot of buys.
Especially in the day and age where you can illegally download and stream everything.
Yeah.
Like, that's really
They're huge on their war on piracy. Like all those streams get shut down, like first fight in and stuff. So,
really?
Yeah, they're fucking.
So how do they do it in WWE can't?
They sink a lot more money into making sure that it happens.
I don't know if WWE even cares at this point with the network. Like, what's the point?
$10, right?
Yeah, like they don't really give a shit.
I mean, UFC has the Fight Pass, but
That's probably the reason why they launched the network.
Even at this point, at that price point, do I really want to watch a shitty stream for?
Yeah, that may or may not
get
go
them
down
all
on
for
me.
$10. Yeah, what's the point?
Yeah, so CM Punk's been playing his cards very close to his chest as far as his training goes. There's absolutely zero video footage of any kind of training that he's been doing. Well, I guess, but I think he just doesn't want anyone seeing his strong points and his weak points. It's just kind of, okay, here's what he's, find it, buy the pay-per-view and find out. Not only that, more so for his opponent, so that he can go into the ring and
Now, is this guy being paid off to do a job at Punk?
No.
There's a good chance.
maybe.
I can see
There are those conspiracy theorists out there that MMA's a work, and guys are
No, because these guys get paid fuck all. Like, there's no way it can be a work because
I think that
There's
events
unless you're
have
getting
to
money
be
under the
sometimes.
table.
But just because boxing is too
boxing is kind of a different beast. But with MMA, there's not enough money. Like, because if you put big money on someone on an undercard, it's really going to move those odds because no one else in the world is betting on this fucking clown kind of thing, right? And then it's going to raise red flags. So, so if someone's taking a payoff, the guys that aren't getting paid anything, you can't really do that logistically. And the guys that are making, 6 to 7 figures, there's not enough, there's too much for them to lose to do it, kind of thing. Like, they're making more than what the payoff of whoever would have paid them would have been. A career-wise kind of thing. So, could it happen? Like, individual sports are the ones you gotta look at. Like, they just uncovered all this shit with tennis, right? With tennis players taking payoffs.
Really?
Because you only gotta pay off one person to throw the fucking match. It's not like a football game where you gotta pay off 32 people, right? Like, it's this one guy.
The whole baseball team.
Without getting too far off, not
getting
getting too far off track of the original topic here, what's the story with this? This is news to me.
Tennis
Yeah.
gimmick? They just uncovered that there was some, I think it was Russians, wasn't it? A couple Russian players in whatever U.S. Open or something like that. Yeah, and Europeans and stuff. Yeah, they're been taking POs to.
So is that to benefit from gambling on the sport? So
yes.
somebody can.
That's the gambling.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, like it's really hard to call. I have not seen a betting lineup for CM Punk yet on this.
He's an underdog from one that I saw.
Yeah,
like,
I would
surely betting,
imagine
like,
so.
Heavy underdog.
Yeah, Lesnar opened as a slight favorite, and he's shifted to a very slight dog. It's more that fight's more or less even though if you really want to split, unless you're splitting hairs.
Who makes these odds and decides what they're going to be? What's factored in?
Vegas, basically.
Vegas.
So they basically they go by public interest, right? So they see how many people are talking about, hey, this guy's gonna win, hey, this guy's gonna win, and then they start on that. But basically, the goal in Vegas is to have equal action coming in on both parties, be it team fight or whatever, right? And so if one guy's getting too heavy, like everyone's betting on Brock's opponent, like okay, well we'll make him more of a favorite and Brock more of a dog, and people are like, oh wait, he's not going to pay out as much now, so maybe they will, because they want equal action, because they're getting their cut either way, right? Like the two sides don't equal a whole when you do it. Like no matter what, the house gets like 15%ish, give or take. Like if two guys are paying even, they don't pay even money. They're paying 87 cents on the dollar. So they're all so if they get even action, they're making 13 cents on the dollar. Is basically how it boils down, right? So that's their goal. But yeah, Brock's a slight dog right now. If you ask the experts, a lot of people think that that's just people betting with their heart because Brock, Brock wasn't well liked from the MMA purists the first time around because he didn't pay his dues and he came in and ran his mouth and blah 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 blah. But realistically, this guy that Lesnar's fighting is 5 years older than Lesnar. Lesnar has 7 inches of reach on this guy, which is insane. This guy's just basically he's a knockout artist, right? But Lesnar has a gas tank. This guy doesn't. Lesnar has a wrestling pedigree. This guy's horrible on the mat. Like he's been submitted by just absolute jobbers once they get him down.
But if you said he's a knockout artist,
yeah,
Brock can't take a punch.
No, but here's what people are thinking. Like if he's got 7 inches of reach, it won't come down.
Right, yeah.
Like that's a like
Brock just takes it down.
that's a huge.
Just hold him back.
And they said as long as he's still the same Brock that he was in the Frank Mir fight and stuff, he said he'll get a nice deep takedown and probably.
He doesn't look his age, that's for sure.
No, yeah, no, he looks like a
phenomenal.
animal still.
Yeah.
But as you've told me before on the program, like wins and losses really mean nothing in the sport because they kind of make matches based on what's going to draw and interest.
Right.
Or in other real sports, your win-loss record means everything. So the win-loss is really irrelevant in any of these fights on who goes over. So it doesn't lead to necessarily getting a title opportunity or getting more money overall.
And there's zero title implications in Brock's fight because there's really no intention. As of now, there's no intention for him to fight beyond that.
It's just really weird when you think about it because it's still legit like a real sport.
Oh yeah.
And no other sport has that mentality when putting together a match.
Although if Brock loses, it could mean a lot for that guy.
Yeah.
He'll probably get
Mark Hunt will get. But
he's always kind of martial fight.
Yeah, but he's always kind of just on the cusp of the top 10. He's fighting the Roy Nelsons and Czech Congos of the world kind of thing, right?
Like I'm sure, like in NHL or NFL, they'll schedule certain games that they think will draw or they know will draw. But it's not like, well, the season's done. We're gonna have this guy, this team, play this team.
Yeah, for their prime time. For their prime time schedule, they look at the week and they say, okay, they look at divisional matchups because those are always big feuds, right? So that's better to put on TV.
Yeah, any long-standing rivalries.
Yeah, any long-standing rivalries or anyone who's just been hot lately. Like it's like a couple of years ago they had Seattle was in like 5 primetime games just because they were going out and taking names and kicking ass kind of thing. So Seattle will have like 5 primetime games.
So does it change week to week, like who gets it, like or do they?
No, they come out with it ahead of time. You really have to there was that one year where Indy just shit the bed when Manning was hurt and they pulled them from a prime time. They moved him to Sunday 12 o'clock and moved somebody else into the night game.
Yeah,
oh really?
Yeah, you really have to shit the bed to have your time change.
Yeah, that's not a lot of work for a network to start shifting shit around.
It is, and ticket buyers and stuff like that too. It kind of fucks around with them if they had a schedule of some kind, right?
Okay, so CM Punk, what's the reality if he wins and loses? What happens both sides of the coin, just in general to UFC to CM Punk?
It's an experiment. He's not young. He's 38, 37, somewhere in there. He's like my fucking age, right? He'll never get a title shot. He'll never crack the top 10. This is just to pop numbers. It's the same thing they did with Herschel Walker a couple of years ago when they just put him against random guys with like 2 and 4 records and shit like that just for him to beat up on. And that's it. It's just to pop numbers, have a name, get in there, let him cut a promo. It's almost the wrestling mentality of it. It's like, hey, he's not going to be relevant ever, but people want to see him. He's crossing
He's
two
the equivalent.
genres.
He'd be the equivalent of like bringing in the midgets.
Yes,
for the night.
Exactly.
Or,
Exactly.
pop the house.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
just whatever happens, happens, and
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah, I think they're not concerned whether he wins or doesn't because
What does it mean for CM Punk if he loses?
Who cares? He's fucking rich.
2 years of build to this big match.
Yeah.
He underperforms.
but
Does it matter if he
I don't
drops?
think it matters.
No, Lesnar lost his debut.
He's gonna make his money and then walk
I
away.
don't
And then he could say, "I
No.
tried,"
Yeah, and no.
and that's the worst.
And he'll fight once more. If he loses, he'll still fight
Yeah, I
once
can see
more.
that, yeah.
And it won't quite be like the central focus of a card. It'll be kind of, a title fight on there, and then maybe another
Maybe a solid mid-card draw.
Yeah, a solid mid-card draw, and then he'll be like the middle, the third last fight kind of thing, right?
I can see that.
Does he ever go back to wrestling?
Not WWE.
Not WWE. Well, never say never. Just
You
yet,
never
right?
know, yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't close the door on that if I were.
I guess he'd do something with Colt.
Yeah.
Whatever Colt wants to do, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. Colt,
Yeah.
But Colt's too entertaining now, right? Whereas CM Punk is just unless they
They'll be friends. They'll want to
Yeah.
do something,
And
a
they do,
project, or
yeah.
go to
Oh,
Japan
yeah,
and do
or
something.
do
New
something
Japan
along
or
together,
yeah,
just
Ring
do
of
it.
Honor.
Yeah, sure they gobble them up there.
Yeah.
Raw last night, The Miz defended his championship. He returning Kane, who's been off television for a while. He's one of 6, 7 guys that have been off TV for a while, waiting to return. Randy Orton being another one.
Yeah.
Any excitement or intrigue with Kane returning to Raw, or is it something that 20 years now of Kane being on television, is that ship sailed for most people? Is there still value to Kane on a regular weekly basis?
Depends on the program that he's in. I think.
having him in the IC
Yeah.
title.
And he's always one of those guys that's all to me anyways, I could be just kind of exaggerating here unintentionally, but it seems like he's always taking time off, coming back, and he's out for a bit, and he's back again, he's out for like I've seen Kane come back like a dozen times in the last 10 years, you know what I mean? Like it seems like he's always kind of out for a little while.
Yeah, if it's not an injury, it's a movie.
Yeah,
or
yeah, exactly.
it's
Yeah,
always something.
yeah. So he's got his spot on the roster, but he's not.
And you know what?
He's not must see TV.
He deserves a spot forever.
Oh, for
just
sure.
because of his consistency.
Exactly.
But I mean,
He's been with the company since like 90.
it's kind of like the Big Show where you're like,
Yeah.
you can kind of plug him in anywhere you need him.
Yeah. He came
But
in
it's
as
not going to cause a
dentist
whole
for-
lot of excitement.
Came in as Isaac Yankum,
Yeah.
he did the fake diesel
Diesel.
run, and then he then was
Kane in
Kane.
'96.
He's been with the company since 93,
And,
94.
pretty
Like,
much
that's unheard
a
of.
problem-free employee, like always there.
Yeah, I don't think
Injuries even then.
Yeah, I don't
they're
think he's
pretty
ever had a
limited.
suspension of any kind.
I think
No,
if
yeah.
booked correctly at this point in time, he could still be an attraction where he can be a novelty or a nostalgia act. I don't know if there's necessarily a place for him week to week, and that's just because he's been so overexposed. He's been on TV weekly for almost 20 years. So not to say he doesn't contribute, because he's one of the best big men in the history of the business, hands down.
Absolutely.
And he still works really well.
Yeah,
Like,
he's great.
like given his miles in the business. Like,
So he's a character. If you protect him and book him as special, he can make those appearances once or twice a year for an angle to pop a number or to get somebody over and still be a value. Like if he left WWE tomorrow and was doing independence, I think he would sell him out everywhere he went.
yeah.
Like, people would still be excited to see Kane and see him in person and meet him. But I don't know if there's that intrigue to watch him on a week-to-week basis, because he's literally worked with everybody probably 10 times over
Yeah,
at this
you've
point.
done everything you can. You've taken the mask off, you put it back on.
yeah, they flip him face heel, so much.
And he's also doing that insurance thing now. I don't know if you've seen any of those YouTube videos. He owns his own insurance company in Tennessee, and he's like reading insurance policies and giving like insurance tips, which is kind of cool.
Awesome.
So I think he's kind of he's set himself up. He was smart with his money, and he's now setting himself up for life after wrestling.
Right.
So I imagine he would be coming back on a semi-part-time basis, just like a Chris Jericho does, or a Van Dam.
That would be the best spot. Where you come in for
Yeah.
90 days and then leave. And then
Yeah,
come back
that's
again.
probably what would be the most
Have a set
smart way
storyline,
to
come
do it,
into
yeah.
it, and then leave.
Yeah.
And I think he does have a place in the sense that the new era is essentially small indie wrestlers. So
Yeah.
he is one of the last big men still wrestling today. Him,
Yeah.
the Big Show, guys like Mark Henry. They don't really fit in with the modern style of the
No,
WWE,
it's
but
almost
they
a very
are a unique
awkward
attraction
match,
that there's
yeah.
nobody else like them. So they can come in
Yeah.
and be unique and be
And he
special.
moves well enough, he can still get good matches with those guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Him and Kevin
Kane-
Owens could probably have a
Yeah,
good match.
Kane more so than Big Show or Mark Henry is
Yeah.
going to get a way better match out of your newer guys than those other two guys. Not that they're absolute shit or anything, but pardon me,
Bless you.
but Kane would definitely get a more quality match out of your new guys coming up from NXT and all these indie darlings that they've signed, rather than Big Show or Mark Henry would.
Or throw him in a tag team or something with a young guy.
Yeah.
Well, they usually team them with Big Show now. They're kind of like a tag team attraction on the house shows.
Right.
With that being said, they are doing the brand split, which means the rosters are going to be really thin. Does that mean they have to book a guy like Kane and Big Show more regularly just to have star power and just to have depth on the roster?
No.
Initially, maybe though.
Maybe, yeah. It'll balance itself out. I think maybe initially, and I don't know if you saw this where they were talking about they had a handful of names like Shelton Benjamin and
JTG
JTG and a couple of guys where they just wanted to put a few semi-veteran kind of guys on each roster just to kind of help give this brand split a little more ease, and not have it be like, okay, well,
it's a better balance.
No, we have to
I've
have
always
a lot of
liked the
those.
idea of that because a lot of these guys like Shelton Benjamin, Carlito, they had a good
Carlito,
run.
yeah.
They invested a lot of money in them.
Right.
And they have proved to be consistent draws on the independents for
And they're
years
still
after
fucking
their
household
run.
names in the wrestling world.
Yeah, they're
They
still
just came up at a really shitty time.
Yes.
Where nobody gave a crap.
Right at the tail end of the.
They're still young.
After the Attitude Era and before anything really changed, it was just bad.
Yeah, they're still young. They're still in great shape. They're still drawing on the independents. So I think you can utilize that. And I've said that even years before we would do this podcast. I think there's still a value in guys like that where let them go do the independents for a couple of years, then bring them back for a year or two, let them have a good run, and then cycle somebody else in. It keeps it fresh because people know who these people are. They're over, and it will kind of fill that void of, it's good to see some of the old guys sometimes.
And it gives these
even though they're
guys a
still
run.
young. Yeah.
Like Rhino just came back to NXT again the other day.
Yeah.
Perfect example.
I'm glad they're doing that.
Yeah.
I think there's still a lot of value, and a lot of those guys are incredible workers.
Oh,
But
fuck
if
yeah.
you're bringing in these NXT guys, granted a lot of them are polished independent guys,
Sure.
so they don't necessarily have that same system of here's a bunch of green guys we developed in camp. They still
No,
do
yeah,
have some of
it's
those.
not a bunch of just big jacked up guys who they pluck out of gyms and put into camp.
Yeah,
But
which
if-
clearly failed the first time.
If you think of a lot of those guys that they're talking about, a Shelton Benjamin, a Carlito, a Kurt Angle, Jeff Hardy,
Sure.
those guys would give a great rub to some of those guys
Oh,
that are
fuck
coming
yeah.
up, and they can still wrestle at that style that's being produced in the new era of wrestling. So I think it's a win-win across the board, and it also brings these guys onto television, so when they do eventually finish up there, they come back and they're fresh on the independents again, and while they're gone, it gives other guys the opportunity to step up and become household names on the independents. So I think it's really good just to make a healthier business.
And they're able to do it in tiers now because you can bring a Shelton Benjamin in for 2 or 3 matches in NXT that they can build up, draw on their network, and then shine them up and then send them on the main roster.
Well, they can
too, so they can have these dream matches in NXT that aren't really dream matches.
Did you read in the cruiserweight tournament?
Yeah,
there was someone else there.
Brian Kendrick.
Brian Kendrick,
Yeah,
those are good examples of that.
exactly.
And then if they succeed there, let's throw them on Raw for a little bit and see what happens.
Things,
It's I don't think there's ever been a time where so many wrestlers from around the world and for so many different organizations are getting the WWE rub thanks to the network. Whether it be NXT, their regular pay-per-views or monthly specials to this
They
cruiserweight
seem
classic.
finally, they're comfortable enough to say, okay, we have the WWE style, which is Raw and SmackDown, but there's room for other things.
other product,
and
yeah.
it's the first time that they
really
haven't
let it
said it, but they're clearly acknowledging the fact that
Yeah,
there's different styles of
they
wrestling.
Well,
really
that's what
run,
the
yeah.
new era is.
Yeah.
It's AJ Styles, it's Dean Ambrose, it's Seth Rollins, it's all
That's a
these
good,
guys.
AJ Styles, that would not have happened even close just a year ago even,
No.
I think. Not even close.
So I think it's one of those situations where TNA is so far off the radar now. Ring of Honor is always going to be a niche product.
Yeah.
So I think they've come to that realization that we own wrestling.
Yep.
So we own wrestling.
In North
so,
America, anyway.
Hey, why don't we sell that genre of wrestling too? People are already paying to see this, but there are those fans that are paying to see that style of wrestling, so let's sell them that. And
It's
make money from them
those
as
niche
well.
markets, we can do the niche market too. So they can do everything.
Yeah.
People complained about Monopoly before. Now it's even more intense. They're we can also do the indie wrestling and do whatever we want.
And that's what the network has done. Because
Yeah,
it's like, well, we have content to fill, so why not have an indie product?
And they can do it cheap. Clearly they're doing
Well, where
it cheap.
else in the world can these guys go to make that kind of money now?
Yeah.
I don't imagine.
New Japan is the only option.
I don't imagine TNA
Yeah.
is shelling out top dollar to get guys off the independents or anything right now. I don't think they financially could. I don't know that. That's just me speaking up my ass. But just
I'm
looking
pretty
at their
sure-
business
I
model,
imagine, no.
I don't imagine
I'm
it's
pretty
all
sure
right,
it's
that guy's a hot
money.
prospect on the independents, not Travis Cole. Let's throw a bunch of money at him and get him. So WWE literally, it's a good thing and a bad thing because WWE ultimately controls the business.
Right.
So it's providing more opportunities for everybody by offering all these different products and different programming on the network.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's going to come a time where they can really dictate who gets paid what and where because there's
What else are you
nobody
gonna do?
else out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, especially if they're in bed with guys, like, so they can tell Gabe Sapolsky and be like, yeah, this is how you should do it from now on.
Yeah.
Like, oh, so that company's going to change, or who they look for is going to change.
Exactly.
So they're going to assert their control because now they're working with independent companies, which is really weird.
So they're really monopolizing.
Yeah.
Like I remember I had
Oh,
you might have a house.
my house.
I had April Hunter on the Hot Seat Audio podcast. I knew she was talking about they offered TNA offered her a job, and it was like something like $200 or $300 a match, no health insurance, like no nothing. So there was no intrigue to
Real
do it
incentive.
unless you were literally just going, all right, cool, I'm getting my break. I want to be on TV.
Yeah, you get a couple of weeks on TV and then up your indie
Rate.
Yeah.
But like they're so far off the radar now. I don't even know if it's worthwhile for them to do that. Other than hey, I get to go make some money on a Tuesday when they do their tapings. Like
It's clearly not worth it. Their top guys are all leaving, so
Yeah.
something's going on.
like Steel Domain Wrestling is a company I wrestled down from Minnesota, and they were teasing that they have a TNA guy that's going to be on one of their shows, and I didn't bother to ask who it was going to be, but Travis mentioned to me it was some guy they just signed. I literally had never heard of him because the product isn't up here and it's not prevalent in the mainstream. So that just goes to further that WWE really has a monopoly. Like if you're not there or associated with them, it's tough to make a name for yourself elsewhere now.
Well, just any show they create on the network will have higher ratings than TNA. That's on
Anything.
supposedly a major cable network.
Yeah.
So this internet broadcasting thing is bigger than any network TNA can get signed on. So they can just start creating little promotions if they want
Yeah.
to fill out their lineup. Like call it a
Tuesday
Cruiserweight
Championship Wrestling, Wednesday Championship.
Well, Triple H said that Cruiserweight Classic was a new brand. Like, what the fuck's that mean? So they're gonna have a whole Cruiserweight thing?
Well, there
Moving
was
forward,
talks
or
for
what?
years,
So-
or not for years, for the last year, there was going to be that Cruiserweight show.
Well, they did a
So-
pilot taping at the Florida at the Full Sail University, and
Yeah.
I guess that was the precursor to what we're seeing now.
Yeah, so there was that talk for a long time. There was going to be a Cruiserweight
Yeah.
show on there, which I asked last week on the podcast, and maybe you can give me your opinion on this. I think, is it splitting hairs too much to have the NXT brand and have a Cruiserweight brand? Because they're essentially the same style of wrestling, where NXT will have some WWE style performers and characters that they're grooming for WWE, but a lot of what made NXT what it is you have your Nakamura's, you have your Nevilles, you have
Right.
your Sami Zayn's, your Kevin Owens, your Cesaro's. It has that brand of wrestling already, so NXT would have to kind of reformat itself.
I think there's room if they go with the premise that they're bringing in non-signed talent, so it gives it like this. I don't know, this thing that these guys that you wouldn't see normally, that probably wouldn't even be given a chance even in NXT. Like some of these guys are really small. Like, I don't know how they would look in the ring next to a.
So kind of like an open mic night for independent wrestling, where it's like here's some
Yeah.
top indie guys you probably never see on Raw, but kind of have a following. Check them out. And
Yeah, and
see
then
them on the network.
like if you bring in 32 guys, there's bound to be one or two that'll catch a little bit of flame, and then you can probably bring them into NXT after that and draw some money.
Well, I imagine that's the plan with like if they are going to have a Cruiserweight style show.
I'm sure they have a short list of who they're all signing after this whole
Yeah, I'm
tournament
sure.
is over. Like, there's no way like Kota Ibushi is not gonna just
Go
go
away.
there for nothing.
Yeah.
Like there's something planned for him.
Yeah.
Brian Kendrick doesn't matter. Tajiri doesn't matter. They're
Yeah,
in and out.
there's a
as
couple
they
guys
please.
that they have groomed, and then there's going to be a couple guys that really surprise them and go, "Whoa, okay." that
I think
was
so,
really
yeah.
good," and, some
There's
other
probably some guys that are gonna shit the bed and you're like, yeah, that's why you're an indie wrestler. Like, that's why you're gonna stay. And then maybe a couple of years later they come back and they're better because they were too young or too small or whatever. Like some of them don't even look like men. Unfortunately, they just look like little boys.
That's what Travis Cole is.
No, they'll get older, they'll get bigger, and they'll get better.
Before we take our last commercial break here, very quickly, because we are pressed for time, Jimmy Snuka was acquitted as not mentally capable of standing trial, but has been announced for the 2017 WrestleCon convention.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? Is that really a bad idea with him still being in proceedings?
I think that's a Slammy Award for the best work of the year.
decade.
He got out of another murder charge. Same murder.
Has he been completely acquitted of it? Like, is it,
I don't know.
Or are they still? Is he still in
not
trial?
sure.
Because like that sounds so silly to me to be in trial and be like, yeah, I'm going to take a booking when you're trying to tell people you're insane. And he may or may not be. But I was like reading some of the information on it like a couple weeks back, and they're talking about like was it maybe his wife that he's completely lost touch with reality when they arrested him and put him in jail. That he thought he was actually at an autograph convention and was signing autographs for the prisoners and stuff like that. And he had no idea. He just thought he was at another convention. We're not anybody to say whether he's crazy or not crazy, but I think it is crazy to take a booking.
Yes.
With the public when you're trying
Whoever
to...
his lawyer is should be like discouraging him from doing anything publicly. That's not a good idea.
I'm not encouraging murder, and I'm not saying he murdered anybody, but if you're trying to get off the hook for murder by telling people you can't, mentally understand, or speak for yourself, like, who's going to be the person to say, oh no, we know he's crazy, but we're just going to have him out there signing autographs. We know he's nuts, or lost touch with reality, or whatever it is they're trying to get away with, but
from a promoter standpoint, it's going to be a good draw.
Yeah, for the promoter, it's like, I don't care if he doesn't know where he is, as long as he's putting his marker and his name on that piece of paper. Like, it's just so silly to me.
No, that's not.
That's going to be like a shit show waiting to happen if that actually does go down. Because I can't imagine, like, anyone for that matter, like asking about it. Like, I mean, what the hell is he going to say?
It's crazy.
Yeah, you think he's going to get a lot of questions.
Yeah.
You're like, so did you do it or what?
It's not even that, just like,
Your 8 bites.
here you go, buddy. All right.
What's your name, brother? It's just silly to me. Like, I don't want this to come out the wrong way, because I'm not condoning murder, and I'm not, even if he did do it, there's got to be some kind of consequence. But the guy is 70 years old, so I understand the family. Like, we need to, we want justice. Completely understand that. 100% agree with that. But the amount of money that's probably being spent on trying to try, and when he is at a point where he probably is physically incapable at this point, and does spend a lot of time just sitting at home, unable to live life on a day-to-day basis. I don't know if putting him in a cell for the rest.
At this point, I think if they were going to do anything aggressively, they should have done it 20 years ago when it happened. Because there was clearly some fuckery that went on, whatever the actual situation was.
Right.
There's some weird shit that happened that probably wouldn't be very acceptable.
Who knows? But it's like for that.
Well, he'd likely, because he'd be
implicated,
heavily implicated, and that could bring him down too. And he's avoided that before, so.
I imagine he is completely far removed from this.
Yeah, well, it depends how involved he was
at the time
during the original process.
Yeah.
Which apparently was very involved. So.
Could you imagine if he's gone through 20, 30 years of avoiding all these scandals and everybody trying to bring him down, that it was this 30 years later that ends up bringing him back in the fire?
And it would have killed his expansion from the moment it got off the ground. So.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, we're going to remove ourselves from this topic and take our first commercial break, and when we come back, we are going to insert ourselves into Jean Marius and his career.
Again.
We'll be right back. I have to use the washroom quick before we...
I go to Muscles by Marius because I trust them.
The staff is phenomenal. You come in, they're always positive, they're always happy to see you.
I walked in there not knowing a thing about supplements, and the staff there showed me everything I need to know.
I lost about 40 pounds and then put on about 10 pounds of muscle.
I've gotten stronger, I have more energy.
I go to Muscles by Marius because they offer great advice, competitive pricing, and they care about helping you achieve your goals.
If I can do it, you can do it.
CWE Canada.ca. 123approved.ca specializes in first-time car loans and negative equity trades. Regardless of your credit past, we can help you get the financing that best suits your needs. To learn more about 123approved.ca or to see what you qualify for, call 204-444-4123 today.
CWE fans, the action and excitement of adrenaline is only the beginning. To get the full CWE experience, check us out on YouTube. There, you can catch up on adrenaline and classic CWE television episodes. Watch The Snake Bit with Jordan Garber, the weekly CWE podcast, promos, our event center, and so much more. Subscribe to the CWE YouTube channel today.
You have that I don't have.
Zubaz.
Rooms and accommodations for CWE events provided by the Travel Lodge.
Give your body the edge in one click with musclesbymyers.com. We have sports supplements, vitamins and minerals for all lifestyles and levels of fitness. And call or email for free one-on-one guidance. Smart buyers shop at Myers and musclesbymyers.com.
How's everybody doing today? How do you become a wrestler? Yeah. The same way you become anything else. You have to go to school and work really, really, really hard. On the CWE webcast. Did you finish your drink, Marius?
Yeah, I finished both my drinks.
Both of your drinks. So you're feeling pretty good right now.
Yeah, oh yeah.
We normally have Jordan Garber.
It's just apple cider, it's all good.
We normally have Jordan Garber here smelling like weed, and now we have you here with alcohol. So we're promoting a good, clean living.
Jordan takes like fucked up drugs that I don't even know the names of.
Yeah, he's always like, hey, have you heard of this? I was like, I've never heard of that, Jordan. And I've been in many wrestling locker rooms.
It's like a pill that you gotta like shave and stuff.
Yeah. Don't take the whole thing, you'll die.
Yes. Kids these days and their drugs.
Yeah, it's like,
whatever happened, just cocaine and whiskey.
I know. It's like, man,
Put the line on the damn table.
I am 38 years old. I do not need to try new drugs at this point in my life.
Maybe you do.
Fuck, you know what? Maybe I do. Next year.
Speaking of drugs, this is a question that actually spawned from the original Jordan Garber podcast that I now ask all my guests. Have you ever smoked crack with Buddy Weiser?
No, I have not smoked crack with Buddy Weiser.
That was good to leave.
I did meet him immediately coming out of jail from selling and smoking crack.
Is that what you went to jail for?
Well, at least one time, did a show in Gimli. I think it was his first time back. I think he got out that day or the day before or something. Yeah.
So right out of jail, right into the wrestling ring.
Yeah, pretty much.
Did he have gear? Or did he just wrestle like in a nails type gimmick, like with jail?
I don't remember him having gear. I do remember him selling weed.
At the show that day?
Yeah.
How do you get out of jail and start selling drugs that same day?
Well, I'm guessing you make a lot of connections in jail. I've never been to jail. I've seen Orange is the New Black. I assume that's how jail works. So Yeah.
I've seen Oz.
Girlfriends, you know, as soon as
Kevin
you know.
Nash, the wrestler.
Yeah.
So Sean Marius, I've known you a long time. You started in the wrestling business in 2004.
Yes.
You're not from Winnipeg. You're from a small town in Manitoba. Tell us how your wrestling journey began.
So basically, I was in a rock band, and I got tired of that, and I wanted to pursue my lifelong dream of being a wrestler.
Were you really?
Yeah.
I didn't know you were in a rock band.
Yeah, we recorded at Sunshine Studio, which is where Chantal Kraviasek recorded her platinum Canadian album or whatever. Had moved to the city for college or university, and I looked up some wrestling schools. There wasn't a whole lot at the time. Don Callis, we won $1,500, and he didn't really actually have a school. So unlike La Sombra and Oz, I chose to go with a school that had an actual ring, but that wasn't even much better, I guess. I don't know. There's a CWF Training Academy on Sutherland.
Yeah, that's where I did my training.
Yeah, my first day there, pardon me, my first day there across the street, the whole yard was taped off in like police tape. I'm like, oh, okay, this is a good start.
Now, when you were training at the Shack, as it's known, it's now like a convenience store, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah,
It's still up, and
Yeah.
thought it should have probably been torn down back then.
Yeah, it is still up, and they're selling food out of it, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Who was training at the time? Because I trained with Gene Swan, but we had left to go train elsewhere.
Yeah, no,
because-
so at that time, Rob Stardom was doing the training. When I started, it was Ernie Todd did like kind of like these preliminary training. It's just a lot of calisthenics and just
That
basic
he did right
bumping.
along beside you, right?
No. Yeah. So we did like just calisthenics and then basic bumping. And I don't even really recall Ernie getting in the ring for that matter.
Talked a lot outside of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, oh yeah, tons. And then I did that for like, I don't know, the first 3 weeks or so, and then started training with Rob from there.
So you're from small town Manitoba,
Yeah.
moved to the big city. What's your first impression of Ernie Todd and the professional wrestling industry?
Well,
Don't hold back.
no, my first impression was that like there was always something off about him. Like my first meeting with him was signing all the waivers and cutting him a check because he needed the check right away. And then from then on, there was always something a little weird about it. And sure enough, you know, it came through. It was all just about the money. It didn't really matter who I was as a person or why I was in the business. Rob was more concerned about that kind of thing. Ernie just wanted the money, which is fine. I understand that. He's a promoter.
Hey.
But he was, I don't know, he's just a big talker, right? He's just a lot of words and a lot of bullshit.
So, what was training with Rob like? Because he has trained some guys in the area, like AJ Sanchez is trained by Rob Stardom, but he'll claim that there really wasn't much training to be had. And then Rob has, admittedly, produced some guys that are fucking horrible that probably didn't show up to training that claim they were trained by Rob Stardom.
Yeah.
What was your training like with
So
Rob?
at the time, there was a few of us. There was me, Scotty Raver, Corey Kovash, who sometimes comes by to some shows still, and a kid called Dusty Dumont, and Andrew, who was Gorgeous George's nephew.
I
remember Gorgeous George, yeah. I was lucky. Rob actually took quite a shining to me and really liked me, so he spent a lot of time with me. I actually got mostly a full training schedule. We were going there 2 times a week. He would spend hours with me. I'd go to his house afterwards. We'd drink beer, watch tapes. So I am fully aware of the people that got trained by Rob. I actually did get trained by Rob, where he's actually spent time with me, and I learned pretty much all of the basics through him, and then he would also find me bookings. Pretty much from the start, from my start in the business, he was finding me bookings as a ref. I was working for Ernie. I did some shots with Tony, with Bobby, and all that sort of things.
So, in an interesting little tidbit, you, in your very first professional wrestling match, won the CWF Tag Team titles.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So, it was supposed to be my first match. I was working with a trainee, a fellow trainee, Dusty, against Rob and another trainee. They were the CWF Tag Team champions. Rob was actually leaving the company. And so they were put in a position where they had to switch the belts. So they put it on us. Even then, I thought it was weird. I'm like, well, I just started. It doesn't seem right that I would win a championship. I know it's a work, but still, like, you should at least earn something. But Ernie wasn't going to run for that summer anyways, so I won the belts, and then he stopped running, and then I went to River City Wrestling.
Now, you didn't win the titles under the name Jean Marius. You were
No.
given a name by Ernie Todd. What was that name?
It was Jean Lavernay, which I later came to find out, months later or whatever, that would be Vance Nevada's shoot name.
Now, were you given any explanation on why you'd be called this, or
No, not at all. That's the way it was.
it was just Ernie chuckling that he was ribbing you and putting his tag team titles on a guy he was giving a rib name to?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he sure showed Vance.
He sure did.
Yeah.
So you won those titles.
Yeah.
And you never actually defended those belts, did you?
I never did. No. That was in June, and then he didn't run a show again. I don't think till maybe later in the fall. He might have run a show, but he was doing his reserve tours, and he had Carey and a couple of other guys. But I was in school and I was working, so I really couldn't go on the road at the time. It just wasn't something I could do.
So nobody.
So yeah, I just did defend them.
Nobody leaves the CWF on good terms. I imagine you didn't either. What's your departure story?
Yeah, so I decided, since he wasn't going to be running and I wanted to have some actual matches, I figured it would have to be in Winnipeg, so I contacted Wayne Stanton through Rob. And then when Ernie got wind of that, it became a big controversy. So he emailed me saying that he talked to his lawyer and that he would be suing me for the remainder of the training fees. I was at that time paying month to month. It was $100 a month, which I thought was reasonable. I was fine with that. But then he wanted me to pay out the whole rest of the year, even though I wasn't going to train, that he didn't have a trainer even. Because I think Carey was maybe doing the training for him, but I don't know how consistent it was.
Yeah, I remember him advertising Carey as a trainer, but
Yeah.
I don't recall him actually being down there very often.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, well, you know what. And Rob and Carey were good friends, so if there was something legitimate to it, Rob probably would have said, just keep training with Carey. And he didn't do that, so obviously there was something up. And then so I told him I was going to River City Wrestling, and that's when the email started with the lawsuits and stuff. And
were you actually served court documents?
I was not. I was in business administration. I had a business law course as part of that. So my teacher had actually been a student and a teacher at Harvard. So I went to him with just to ask him a question, like, what do I do with this guy? And he's like, he sounds like he just wants money. So I sent him a $100 check for 1 extra month fee, and that was the end of it. In retrospect, I probably shouldn't even have done that. But I had sound legal advice. I figured out what's $100. I sent it to him, and that was the end of it. He was happy with his $100. I don't think Scotty ever paid. I don't think Dusty ever paid. I don't think any of the others paid. I made all that money back working for Ernie like 3 years later. So
all was well and under the rug when you went back to work with him.
Yeah, he didn't even remember it. He had no idea. He probably tried to sue so many people. He didn't think of a shit. So.
And he probably just desperately needed guys to do a show at that point.
I think he desperately needed a guy to ride in the van with him. I spent 5 days in the van, just me and him, non-stop.
That was a big part of why I eventually stopped touring with him.
Yeah.
Driving in the van with him was too much.
We went.
It didn't matter how many shows you were doing or how much money you were making.
Yeah, it was only like 4 or 5 shows. We went from Lloydminster to like Fort Francis in a span of 5 days. I don't know how he made any money on it, but especially I saw what he was getting paid for those tours because we were changing in an office and the bill was right there, so I knew what he was. I'm like, I don't know how you cut it, but all right. Yeah, so I made my money back eventually, and we had a laugh about it. I put up with him for 5 days, which was a lot.
It's
a patience.
That deserves a championship, though.
Training and patience. And on that tour, I actually lost the CWF Tag Team titles 4 times without ever having won them. So I feel like I made do. You know, it was a couple of years later, but I made up for it.
You did.
Yeah.
So you go over to River City Wrestling, which is a completely different zoo. What was your first impressions of Wayne Stanton and the River City Wrestling locker room?
A lot of characters. I didn't know where I was. I was like, this was in West Broadway at the Broadway Community Center, and I'm a small town boy. I grew up very innocent life, I guess, in comparison, and I'm going through these areas and going to, like Kelvin High School, where we give away tickets and stuff, and just seeing all these inner city kids, like, this was a completely different monster to me. It was strange meeting guys like, I don't know, like Louis, first of all. It's like the guy's sitting in the dressing room in his pants like this, and he's got like a hole in his under, his ball sacks hanging out. Like,
I remember vividly walking into the Broadway Neighborhood Center locker room and seeing Louis wash his hair with lice shampoo.
yeah, I actually remember that. I have witnessed that as well.
I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah, in the sink.
In the sink.
In the sink,
That we
yeah,
all
so
use.
Brewer bath, right in the sink there. It was interesting. It was luckily I knew some of the guys, a lot of the CWF guys at the time, and I jumped ship. So AJ Sanchez, Joey Blitz, Gibby Guerrero came over, Sugar Sheen as well, and then myself and a couple of the other trainees had switched over. I was probably the most active of the group, like I pursued it a little bit more than they did. Like Scotty kind of always came in and out. It was a different show. CWF shows were probably better run. Like they had a more tight card when they did their big shows at Maples. But the RCW shows drew well. Obviously, it's easy to draw well. I know it's pain to get in. So.
What was your relationship with Wayne like?
I never really had a relationship with Wayne. He's always a very strange character. I've been fired from him once. I think everybody has. He asked me how much I wanted to get paid. I said a number, and then he got mad at me.
And he fired you?
Yeah, I got fired. Yeah.
How much did you ask for that he fired you over?
I think I had said $30.
Wow.
But he asked me, so I'm like, okay, I don't know, $30.
So you said how much?
This was years. This is actually like, yeah, I've been in the business already 3 years, maybe.
So he asked you how much do you want to get paid? $30.
Yeah, something like that. And then he threw a 20 at me. He's like, I don't want to see you again. I think I worked for him again the next week. It wasn't a big deal. You were actually just starting to book at the time. It was at the Indian Métis Friendship Center in 2008.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were kind of just working your way in, and I was just coming back because I'd been away for like 6 months, 7 months or something. So.
Yeah, the Indian Métis Friendship Center. That the most prominent story for me during that time was me being told by Wayne that Vinny couldn't put somebody over because it was his birthday.
Right, yeah.
Jaron Rose was like red hot as a deal, and Vinny was the big, inner city baby face, and we were gonna fuck him and put some meat on Jaron to lead to this rematch.
Yeah.
How would you feel if you were asked to do a job on your birthday? And I said, I wouldn't care.
I've done jobs with clowns and midgets. So
and then he said, wouldn't it be nice if you were 60 years old and you look back and you remember that time you won on your birthday?
Yeah. I'm sure Vinny remembers most of his birthdays. Yeah, actually on that show too, I worked some guys from Alberta. I think somehow they slammed me and my boot kind of hit him in the eye and cut him a little bit under.
Oh wow.
And that was one of the things when I said the PO, and he's like, oh, you hurt a guy? I'm like, well, I got cut. I'm like, it's not a big deal, right? It happens.
You hurt a guy. How dare you ask for money?
So I got fired, and then it was fine.
You have to eat with everybody. While we're going down the line here, around that time you also worked with Premier Championship Wrestling and Andrew Shellcross. What was that like, making the jump to the weekly lit shows? And at the time, most definitely at the time, the best locker room in the city.
Yeah, So I had been in the business, I'd been with RCW for almost exactly a year, and I had wrestled everybody on the RCW roster at that point.
Including Jackie Youngblood?
Yeah, I actually, the first match I called on my own was with Jackie Youngblood. Yeah, I would not want to see that match again. But so I'd been in the business for about a year, and I worked everybody, so I wanted to go to PCW to wrestle different people, get better, and just kind of expand my horizons. And I enjoyed PCW. I was given a mid-card kind of jobber gimmick that I took the ball and ran with. I feel I got it over really well.
The $20 man, Sean
Yeah,
Marius.
so every match I would bet with how hard was it to get over. I got to cut a promo and wrestle a match every night or every week, and so I would bet with the crowd. The crowd would always win. I thought it would have had a great payoff at the end. We didn't do the payoff in the end, where I would maybe shock the crowd and win. You'd think that'd be the logical thing, especially when they put the belt on me.
Yeah.
We didn't do that. We dropped it the week before. I thought it was strange. I thought it was pretty clear cut.
So the gimmick was you would bet the fan $20 you were going to win, and then when you lost, they would get $20.
Yeah, so they would win. Basically, Andrew was giving away $20.
How did it feel back then that Andrew was paying that fan more than he was paying you to wrestle?
I think I was actually being paid the same. I don't know how the other boys felt though. I think I was
nights of it's a little late tonight.
Yeah,
loot.
I was getting paid about $20 a night then as well. But he's basically giving away a free payoff. I don't know about the other lower card guys. Like for me, it was great. I got to, I got my 10-minute segment. I got my promo. I wrestled my match. I got to wrestle all kinds of guys on the roster. I got to wrestle Adam Knight and Kenny and Royce and all that sort. So for me, it was a great learning experience. And I feel like as a mid-card act, I got over. And I could be plugged in any place on the card and it'd be fine. I kind of always would joke that a lot of the times I was in the diva spot. So like just before the main event or something important, I would come out and do my segment. And it was pretty much run of the mill. Everybody knew what to expect. And then so it'd be fine, right? It'd be even keel and go into their segment or their match and do something hot.
Were you ever fired from PCW?
Yeah.
You've been fired?
No, I haven't been fired from PCW. I got suspended, which was actually, you were booking RCW at the time.
Yeah.
And then I also ended up getting booked on a Canada Day show in Osborne Village.
Yeah.
There's like 1,000 people there. I was the PCW Canadian champion. So keep in mind, I had done about 9 months straight. Like every week doing a job. And then they decide to drop the gimmick, the $20 man gimmick, all of a sudden I went over on Nate Hardy for the belt. And then I did that Canada Day show, and I did the job to JC Dirksen, I think. I was doing a French-Canadian thing, I came out with like whatever.
So a completely different gimmick than what you were doing on
Yeah, it was like the same name, but I was doing like a Quebecer separatist gimmick, I think, just for that show, because that's what Marty Goldstein wanted. And then I wrestled JC Dirksen, and he went over, and the crowd was happy because JC Dirksen came out with the Canadian flag and the whole patriotic bullshit. And then I got suspended because I did the job. I didn't quite understand. I get it, like they put the belt on me, like whatever. So I was suspended. I was
Keep in mind, like these lit shows at the time are drawing like 30 people.
And
that's $5 a head. $150 gate.
Like,
you've got a show in front of 1,000 people who probably don't go to the lit.
Right.
And this is a pre-YouTube era, so your matches aren't airing online.
No, nothing. And like if you really would compare the two, the Osborne Village show was much bigger. There was legitimately 1,000 people just hanging out watching the show.
Yeah, definitely.
And like there was a lot of good wrestlers on that card, like guys from Alberta and stuff. And like I remember that same summer, Mentolo and Roskilde did like a no ropes match. It was a huge main event, big blow off. There's like, I don't know, maybe 20 people in the crowd. There was like a bomber game that night. It was 30 degrees out. So you're just thinking like, okay, this is your big blow off.
It's funny because I was having a discussion with somebody today about the same bullshit. Literally 10 years after the fact, still happens. You'll still pull that bullshit with guys. So you wrestle in front of 40 people once a month, and you feel
it's not on TV.
No, it really did. It really didn't.
Especially in Winnipeg, it's like I don't mean this disrespectfully, but to 99% of the guys, it's just a hobby.
Yeah.
Like you're not driving your business to generate money. Everyone's just kind of doing it to have a good time and have some fun. Like, why are you being an asshole and restricting guys from doing something they're legitimately just doing for fun because it's something they enjoy doing?
Yeah.
Like there's no money on the line being cost.
No.
It was just one of those things. So I got suspended for 3 weeks. I basically won the belt. I was suspended, and I came back and I dropped the belt. And then I just kept wrestling for him. And then I think
this is around the time too. Like AJ was suspended from all of Canadian wrestling for 30 days because he, as a champion, worked a show for George out in Gimli.
Right.
Yeah. He was not allowed to, and did. So he was suspended. He was not allowed to wrestle anywhere in Canada. Not just for PCW. But for all of Canadian wrestling, he was not allowed.
Well, you know what happens in Gimli pretty much dictates the rest of the wrestling. What's going on? So,
like, what happens if those results end up on a message board? And like, what happens if they saw you live?
Well, it's funny you mentioned Gimli because I got suspended from RCW one time because of that as well. That him and Wayne and George had a falling out, and it was like when we did that tables, ladders, and chairs at the high school.
Yeah.
There's a big falling out there. We were all suspended. I think the whole crew kind of sat in the crowd and watched the show. It was like a skeleton crew. And then Ernie bought out RCW a few weeks later. I don't know. It's fucked up.
So the second
It was
time.
one of the like at that time. Yeah, that would have been the second of 3 times I think that he bought RCW.
Yeah.
We were back a week later. It was like just like nothing happened.
Well, we've got a few minutes left in the program, so we're going to have to get you back on to talk more in depth about some of your travels in Steeltown Pro Wrestling. But we will leave with a little bit of Steeltown Pro Wrestling because they are infamous within the Winnipeg community of producing some of the most solid and horrible wrestlers to ever come out of Winnipeg. So my sponsor, greatest5.com, they asked, who are the greatest 5 shitty wrestlers to ever come out of Steeltown Pro Wrestling?
Oof, that's a tough list, man. Shit.
Tough, like you think you could fill more than 5 spots?
Yes.
Yeah, it would probably be like a
And one of my favorite things to do at the time, if I was on the show or not on the show, was show up with a 2-6 of vodka, drink that 2-6 of vodka, and do commentary on Steeltown Pro Wrestling shows.
Nice.
Just because some of the guys that Rob would put in the ring, like literally just showed up that day.
Yeah.
Like literally, they did one training session and they were in the ring, so you got to see some real gems.
I may have had a few drinks at those shows as well.
Or a few bottles.
I remember like Alex Shaver, God bless his soul, nice guy, but fuck did he stink.
He was the smelliest human
He
being
was
on
one of the
planet.
smelliest people. Like, you'd wrestle him and you'd be like, please douse yourself in Axe first. And
I wanted to douse myself in like acid afterwards
Just
to try to
bad.
get the smell off.
I sold him all his gear, basically. I sold it all to him. He was.
Well, I definitely wouldn't lend it to him.
No, I didn't want it back. Yeah, it was pretty much rotten at that point. He was pretty bad. Wesley Pipes, which was Sean Northstar's brother.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He was really bad. Jack Daniels came in for us one time from Alberta, Morden, and I saw him calling his whole match in the back while still holding his baseball bat. He didn't seem to want to put it down, and I think he accidentally hit Jared in the face while going over the spots, and then I like stopped him and like, put the fucking bat down. Bell time's in like 30 minutes, buddy. It's okay.
You hit him in the face while going over the spots?
Yeah, they did like a duck to clothesline. They're practicing a duck to clothesline spot for some reason. Like, clocked him in the face with the baseball bat. I'm like, just put it down. It's okay. Sidney Manson's got to be up there.
He's like the poster child for Steeltown Pro Wrestling, I think.
He's really just
like when you think SPW, you think Sidney Manson. Like, 'cause
Yeah.
he was such. Not only was he one of like the awful like characters of like just wrestling in general, but he was like a featured performer in SPW. He wasn't just a job guy. He was like a multi-time champion. Was in main events with like Honky Tonk Man.
Rob had a weird obsession with Sidney Manson.
Yeah.
Maybe unhealthy obsession. I don't know what it is. Weird guy. Whatever.
I think Rob's very much like me, that he has like a sick sense of humor for bad wrestling. Like I love bad wrestling, and I will admittedly book some stuff for my own amusement sometimes. That's the joy of being a wrestling booker. You get to do things to make yourself laugh. Yeah. But I think Rob would take it to a whole other level. Like, he was on another planet. Some of the stuff he would put together.
He was, and he was restrained about it. I think it could have been a lot. I think it would have been a lot worse. Like, he wanted to book a lot more weird shit.
Like,
just as bad as it could get. I think he would have been happy with that.
When Cole Cabana came out with the $5 wrestling thing, I said, Steeltown Pro Wrestling's been doing this for years.
Yeah, except it wasn't part of the gimmick. That's how it actually was.
That was just the show.
Yeah.
So that's 4. We need one more name to round off the list.
Oh man, so Jack Daniels, Wesley Pipes, Sidney Manson, Alex Shaver. Yeah. Fuck, there's probably some guys I don't even remember that came in and out. Like,
what about that?
Well, there's pretty much all of the women I would say that we brought in were train wrecks.
Yeah.
My particular favorite was when we booked Kevy Chevy to first beat up the Aaron's Bear. I don't know where even the Aaron's Bear came from, but he started like clobbering him with a chair, beat the shit out of him, and then pile drove. Which woman did he pile drive? And then Aunt Jemima as well, who was telling us she was apparently pregnant at the time.
Well, she wrestled a match for SPW, didn't she?
I don't know if she was like...
She was like in a battle royal
or
something.
Yeah, she wrestled a match. It might have been a battle royal or some kind of segment. I just remember like just Chevy beating the shit out of that bear and then beating the shit out of a woman. And the crowd going crazy for it.
Ricky Cena's mother, who is my former aunt, was also in a few matches.
Yeah. Yes, we named her after you.
Yep, I remember.
Yeah.
Meg the Menace might be one
Meg
of
the
the
Menace.
Yeah. She was solid.
She didn't have teeth, and her tits looked like tube socks with some pool balls in them.
It was an SPW show, if I recall correctly. She was thrown over the top rope and was so aroused by it, she squirted all over the floor of the venue. Were you there for that?
I'm not aware of that. I would believe it.
Yeah.
I know one of the guys that fucked her, God rest his soul, He may have died because he fucked her. I don't know. Yeah. Megan the Menace definitely has got to be on that list. Yeah. Actually, all the women probably. For that matter.
Just one collective spot.
I actually had to take a stink face from the entire women's roster.
Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks to Bobby J. I think that was his idea. That was not a good segment. Some of those women pulled their pants down a little too low.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yikes.
And out of all of them, the worst one was still Bobby J.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah, I could smell his ass on my cheek. It was not good.
Last question. Well, two questions. Are you ever going to come back to professional wrestling? You've been gone for a couple of years now. You were a very prominent and featured figure in CWE before you left. You were main eventing for the CWE Championship with Robbie Royce. And once that run finished, you were done.
Yeah, well,
so
you know what?
Did you leave on top, or are you coming back and going to go for round 2 again sometime?
No, I my last match, like when we're filming this, it was about 3 years ago, a couple of days. I don't think I'll be wrestling again. I don't think I got it in me. I can't do it.
Manager, referee, ring announcer?
Yeah, I would. Well, obviously I've done some ring announcing for you, and I refereed the Alberta tour back in September.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, so like, but you know what? Even that was a lot of work. I don't know. It was fun. I had a good run, but I don't think I would wrestle again. I might help out, like if you did something for TV or something.
Maybe a spot in the Rumble to Remember.
Oh, that could happen. I am in probably better shape than when I actually left.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, that could happen.
That's always a match filled with top stars from the past.
Yeah, I would love to.
Actually,
with Wild Man Purple again.
I keep getting off track here when I need to be taking it home. It's like when I booked in a match. SPW is possibly doing some reunion shows at the end of the year.
There have been rumblings about that.
Is there any chance you'll lace up the skirt for those? You're a very featured performer for that company, multi-time champion.
Yes, I was their champion for 3 calendar years, which is not really true. It hit 3 years, anyways. I told Rob did ask me about it, and I told him that if he was doing something that I would be involved. I haven't really committed to anything, but I still don't see myself wrestling. I just don't have that passion in me anymore, and I don't want to half-ass it.
Yeah.
Even being out of we've got too many guys doing that already.
It's been a couple of years since you've been in the ring, but if he assembles the original SPW crew, you'll still be better than all of them, even with all that time off.
I'm pretty sure with like 5-10 minutes before the show, I could probably knock off enough for us to be fine. Yeah, I could probably do it.
And finally, before we wrap it up, social media, where can people get a hold of you if they want to stay in touch with you?
I am on nothing. I have my Facebook page, or my Facebook profile, and that's about it. That's it, I'm not on social media anymore.
You're off the grid.
I am off the grid, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for being on the program. We're going to get you back to talk about Steel Town Pro Wrestling. We didn't even get a chance to talk about legends like Chip Fletcher and other great SPW.
I had his retirement match, although he did come back.
Well, we do need to talk about that.
Now I know how Sean feels with Ric Flair. Fuck.
We'll be back in 1 week's time. We'll see you then.